All right, Jessica, we are live.
Yay!
Welcome to Tea Talks. Good to have you here. And it's already great just talking to you
Same
about
here.
your journey and your mission and all of that wonderful stuff. So I am going to ask you to introduce yourself. There's like a little bit of a lag between us live and the social media, about 20 seconds or so. So people will be coming in the feed afterwards. But how about you telling us who you are and just introducing yourself to us?
Sure. So, my name is Jess. I am a clinical research nurse. My focus is in breast cancer. I've been doing research for about 12 years, but I've been doing breast cancer research for the past 6 years. And let me tell you, this has been one of the most rewarding jobs that I've ever had because I have just met so many extraordinary people on their journey. I work with people who are recently diagnosed with breast cancer, to those who have metastatic breast cancer, or those who have genetic mutations which led them to be diagnosed with breast cancer. So I work on a number of different trials, and just to see, how these medications work, even though they aren't necessarily FDA approved, but to see the impact that they have on individuals' lives. It's just so exciting to see how they work. And then sometimes with these clinical trials, they actually become the new standard of care. So it's just amazing to see this. And, I'm an inquisitive person. So research is something that I am very, very passionate about because I'm always asking questions. I want to know, well, why is this happening? What's going on with this? So it's just so exciting because in research, you never know what's going to happen. You could have your day planned and then something happens. So
Yes.
totally, totally love it.
It's so true. Jessica, something you said, which I want to come back to. You talk about some of these drugs aren't FDA approved yet, right? It's a clinical trial. And I hate to use the word experiment because that's what people hear about clinical
Right.
trial. But I want to talk about that, about what you're seeing. But before that, a lot of people, right? A lot of, especially women, especially maybe even Black women who get into this role of advocacy,
Hmm.
it's because they themselves were a survivor of some sort. And I know I asked you before that we got on here live, what is your backstory? And you're not a survivor, you're not a cancer patient. So, what was your motivation? What was your why to do this?
So this actually, my mom, she does not have breast cancer, but she had a rare autoimmune disease. And so when I was younger, I would go with her to different appointments, and I would see sometimes she would get good care, other times she wouldn't get care, and sometimes people would not listen to her. And her disease also impacted her ability to work. So I saw people, kind of stigmatizing her because she had a disability related to her disease. And as a result of my mom's experiences, I said to myself, I never want anybody to experience care where they're getting subpar care or they're not being listened to. So
Mhm.
my mom was really the driving factor for me because I would write letters on her behalf so that way she could keep her job. I would make sure that I would have questions for her so that way she could ask her doctors, because sometimes when you have something traumatic going on, you may not be able to have those questions ready. So I was like, look, mom, I need you to be here for me. So let me help you. And so it was just always my nature to want to help and want to advocate for others. I also volunteered for the National Alliance for Mental Illness and advocated um, in Dover, Delaware, in the capital. And once I saw how advocacy could also make an impact on communities and also
Mhm.
individuals, it really, really inspired me to want to go into a role where I was able to advocate for people.
Awesome. So your background is in nursing, right? And you said in your bio that you observed like these clinical trials and it made you want to form your own organization. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the clinical trials that I, work on, these clinical trials, they can be for, like I said, people who are newly diagnosed. And, you know, and seeing this, I saw how these medications could really work for individuals. And I also saw that there was a positive impact on most of the people who were participating in clinical trials. And I said to myself, wow, like everyone should truly know about clinical trials, at least have the opportunity to say yes or no if they want to participate in them. And so I saw for me that there was a need for more diversity because I want Black, brown, white, Indian, Asian. I want everybody to be,
Hmm.
have access to these things. And so that is kind of what spearheaded my initiative for Stand Up to Breast Cancer because I said, if we are going to decrease disparities, especially in cancer, there has to be more representation. So why is it that there are, there's one group more represented than others? And
Hmm.
so when I have the opportunity to educate people about clinical trials and just talk to them, there's many misconceptions about it. A lot of people say, am I going to be treated like a guinea pig? Like that's the one thing, the a lot
Yeah.
not the one thing, but a common theme that I hear a lot with people. And so having the opportunity to educate people and to tell them, things have changed and what's new in clinical research, that's what drives my passion. That's really what it does.
How do you, you're right. It is the, whenever I talk to any guest about clinical trial, right, that is the one that is the one common theme, right? The
Yeah.
distrust, right? And of course, the distrust is even more rampant among African Americans and underrepresented groups because of history, etc. How do you convince, especially Black women, that
Mhm.
clinical trials are safe and it's actually an opportunity for a potentially better outcome for them? How do you get past that thing about, am I an experiment? Because clinical trial is kind of an experiment, isn't it? It really is, right?
It
Uh,
is. It is
yeah.
because we're trying to figure out, well, which medication, works better. And so when I encounter somebody who is hesitant, the first thing that I do, I don't even try to convince them. I listen to them. I
Hmm.
listen to their concerns. And once I've established that rapport and I'm listening, I try to address each and every one of them. I want them to feel comfortable. That's the main thing because when you're entering into a clinical trial, there's so much paperwork, there's so many tests that need to be done. It can be overwhelming. So I
Hmm.
try to make them feel comfortable. And then what I try to do is I try to offer my support. I try to provide empathy to them. I also allow them to know that if they're going to be a clinical trial patient of mine, they're not just a number. They are an actual person. We are going to get to know one another. I always tell them I'm going to be the best friend that maybe they wish they never had because I'm going to want to know everything about them. We have a dialogue and we simply just talk. I present the information to them in a way that's clear and that way they understand. I also allow time for questions and I let them know that if there is any issues, please come to me. I offer to be a support for them. I help them with, I'm like, I will help you with managing your appointments, whatever you need. So it's almost as if I'm like a navigator for them. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of times, because I did ask the woman, she was a Black woman. I said, why did you decide to participate in a clinical trial? She said, because I had support. And so
Mm.
oftentimes people, they may have a lot of issues. They don't feel like they have the support to even join a clinical trial because it's so involved. So I offer them support. I also try to provide resources. I really, try to make it where it is a relationship. There's no coercion or anything. I just try to
Right.
talk to them in a manner in which they understand and truly try to address any concerns that they have.
One of the questions that's here on the screen says, what are some of the best educational platforms you use to get your message out to the community? Because you have a big message, and we know you're very active on social media. I know you also do some partnerships and stuff. So what else do you do? How do you get your message? How do you reach these Black women and these Hispanics, these underrepresented women?
Yeah. So, like you said, social media sharing is big for me because I find a
Hmm.
lot of people are on social media. So I use Instagram. I also use Facebook. But in addition to that, I go to where people are. So, I will go to health fairs, I will go to churches. I, participated in a research study where it's actually me talking with a clinical trial participant about research. Like we were just having a dialogue. And what we did
Mhm.
we showed that video to different churches, different community organizations to see how people felt about clinical trials before they watched the video and then after watching the video. And surprisingly, people were very open to finding more about clinical trials after watching the video. So for me, I tend to really stick to the social media because I'm like everybody seems to have aspect of social media. Even on TikTok, I try to go where the people are
Yeah.
because I could do a number of different things, but I really do feel like being on social media is truly helpful and then going out in the community like when I did a health fair, I saw about maybe like 100 people, and they were all coming up to me asking me, "What's research? How do I get involved with that?" Like people want to
Wow.
know about it. And it's
Wow.
only a matter of just asking people. Like I think there's this unconscious bias too that people
Yes.
will say, I don't know about this person. I'm not going to ask. But you never know. You simply have to ask. You
That's
truly
That's the tagline nowadays, which I'm hearing and I'm loving the just ask, and especially among again minority groups, just ask. Something that you've said to me that still is spinning in my head before we got on the camera here. You were talking about the ages. We talk about diversity in color, diversity, black, white, Hispanics, etc. But then you talked about the diversity in ages and what you're seeing. Can you talk a little bit about that? From the young and just what you're seeing showing up.
Absolutely. So, and people who are newly diagnosed, for me over the years as I've been working in clinical research, I've been seeing an increasing number in the number of 20 and 30-year-olds who are being diagnosed with breast cancer. And it's quite alarming to see because, you know, typically we think that, breast cancer will affect people who are a little bit older than that. But
Yeah.
seeing people who are in their 20s and 30s, it's alarming and it makes me question like what is actually happening. You know, only about 15% of people have a family history of breast cancer that are diagnosed. So a lot of the people who are younger, they have no family history. Some women, they found it actually after they became pregnant and they were breastfeeding and they noticed it, or even prior to delivery, they felt a lump and somebody said, you know what? It's nothing. You don't have to worry about it. It was brushed off. And then come to find out that lump is still there and then it ends up being breast cancer. So I think with young people sometimes providers will not listen to them because there's still that association that cancer typically impacts older people. And it's a shame because sometimes it's missed and then it's a later stage and it can be more,
Right.
especially when you're younger.
Right. It's so sad because you can't get testing isn't until you're what 35, 40, right?
Yes.
So the 20 somethings and even the 30 early 30s some things they're not really it's not really in their consciousness. So it's quite alarming. And so I think as part of your educational outreach, how are you talking to those younger women who don't really want to hear about that right now? They want to live life. Who wants to hear about being cautious? I don't even try to talk to my daughter too much about it because I talk to her, but not too much because people almost don't want to hear that burden. How do you reach the younger generation?
Absolutely. Like it's very challenging because I'll
Yeah.
say even myself in my 20s, I was like, oh, I don't have anything to worry about that at all. So there's one event that I'm actually doing that does target, and that is the upcoming event, A Letter to My Sisters. We are specifically targeting younger women, and we're showing a documentary that features women who are diagnosed in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I'm using that way as a way to reach that target audience. And TikTok. A lot of younger people use TikTok. So we'll actually do self breast examinations and I will show them exactly how to do that. And people are actually very responsive. And some people will even comment and say, it's so important because I found my lump doing, a self
Mhm.
breast examination. So I'm always, talking about ways to, find it doing a self breast examination and also, you know, knowing your body. That's the most important thing. You have to know what's normal for you because there's some people who, have normal lumps, but it's benign. It's not anything.
Right.
If you don't know that about yourself, you could be at risk for breast cancer. But I try to really pay attention to what's the trend, especially among younger women, in terms of what platforms they are using. I've also tried to develop or I'm in the process of developing a community called Breasties of Color that target young women and women of color so that way they are in a safe space and they can find out information. So I'm really trying to target that age group because it's really concerning to me because I say that could be me, that could be
Right.
my cousin. So yeah.
Right. I noticed too, you also recently you posted about, and you post really good stuff. You posted about the air pollution,
Oh yes.
right? That the
Yes.
research is showing that there's stuff in the air that's really targeting, especially the ER positive type breast cancers. I mean, it's almost like, what do you do, right? Do you talk about diet at all in terms of preventative stuff? Do you inform on that in your
So
messaging?
I do talk about ways that you can prevent it. Like there's some things like your air quality, you can't control, the air that you
Right.
breathe. But I do also talk about, okay, exercise. For example, if you exercise, that may decrease your risk because when we have extra fat in our abdominal area, that produces hormones, estrogen, and the estrogen may lead into breast cancer. So I talk about that. I also talk about, decreasing your alcohol intake. A lot of people, especially I think younger women, I can't say this for all, but there's an uptick in adolescent, alcohol drinking, and that may be causing an increase in women in
Mm,
their 20s who are being diagnosed with breast cancer. I talk about smoking. Smoking is also a risk factor. So I try to talk about risk factors that we can change. Now, there
right,
are some things that we cannot change, such as our DNA and our genetic.
right,
So
right,
I really harp on if you have a first degree relative who has been diagnosed with breast cancer, you really should get genetic testing to make sure that there's not a genetic variation that may predispose you to breast cancer. So I talk about things that you can't change because sometimes providers will not have people tested for genetics. I've seen that with my own family. They said, I never
mhm,
knew that I should get genetic testing because my mom had it. I said, you absolutely should get that done. Her mom
right.
and her sister had it, and no one ever offered her genetic testing.
Wow, wow,
Mhm.
wow. That's so that's again, it's that's why we like people like yourself who are advocating, right? Because I had a woman on here, she's a local advocacy founder, and she's been doing it for 6 years. An African American woman in South Florida. She was here, an amazing woman. I'm going to connect the both of you, and
Awesome.
she just learned about clinical trials.
Wow. Wow.
Meanwhile, she's in the community working hard, fielding calls,
Yeah.
and was just recently exposed to this other side. She's also a survivor of 11 or 12 years. Of course, was never offered anything like that,
Mm.
and didn't really know that she could be pointing people in that direction. So I'm gonna definitely connect the both of you.
Yes.
Is this your full-time job, Jessica? Or or is this your full-time job, or do you work at the hospital and work here?
So I do both. I work my full-time job as a breast cancer research nurse, and then I do stand up to breast cancer when I have the opportunity. But this, like stand up to breast cancer, it truly is my passion because just like the woman that you were telling me about, I'm like, why didn't anybody tell her about a clinical trial? I say this, I'm like, we screen for a lot of things when we go into a doctor's office. It could be depression, it could be food insecurity. Why aren't we doing the same thing with clinical trials?
Right.
And, asking about a clinical trial, it shouldn't be a one time thing where it's one and done. No, it should be something that should be asked continuously at each appointment. Are you interested in research? Okay, maybe not at this time, but ask again. And if they are,
Right.
connecting with somebody, because these are missed opportunities to get people involved in research. And because it's not talked about enough, it's almost like this novel idea. If we talk
Hmm.
about it more, it won't sound so foreign to people to be like, oh, okay, I have this option in addition to what's already out there. It'll be
Right.
almost like a normalized.
I want to ask you before we go. In the last 6 years, you've been doing this on your own. You've started the Center for Breast Cancer, but you've been in this work for a while. Are you seeing an increase in representation?
So I would say it's slow, Sharon. Like I still see predominantly one race represented. I will occasionally see, other, underrepresented groups involved in clinical trials, but Sharon, we still have so much work to do. Like it's challenging to see that there's not too much representation. And I think it also goes to the fact too, like one, you have to look at our healthcare providers. Are they representative of the people that we're trying to reach? So I think we need a more
Mhm.
diverse workforce. I also think that we need to continue to try to build trust,
Yes.
among underrepresented groups. We have to acknowledge the history that has occurred, and we need to continue these conversations with individuals. And then, even with clinical trials, Sharon, there are eligibility requirements that may exclude people. And, we need to think about when we develop clinical trials, if we want representation, maybe we need to expand our eligibility requirements. And we also need to think about, okay, there's a lot of time involved in clinical trials.
Mhm.
Maybe we need to do telehealth because some people just cannot get off of work. Sometimes it's a financial thing. So we really need to start thinking outside of the box when it comes to increasing representation. What exactly can we do?
Well, I'm going to give you another last word because I mean this was great. But actually, before I give you the last word, where do you point people to? Do you point them just to where you work, or do you have a network of people doing clinical trials that you say, "Hey, check this out or check that out"? Where do you point to?
So for me, there's actually there's a bunch of like different search engines that people can use to find clinical trials. There's clinicaltrials.gov, which is it's very hard to navigate. So sometimes I
What
will
I
tell
heard.
people about that. But there is also a great app. It's called Ancora AI. Danielle Raddick is the CEO, and she has created a platform where you can plug in the disease that you have. You can type in where you live at, and then clinical trials will start to pop up for people. So I will, point them in that direction. If they need assistance, I'm always willing to help and look. I'll say, hey, where do you live at? What type of cancer do you have? And I will try to find them one so that way they can get involved in it. So I really try to be hands-on with people if they're interested because, like I said, it's my passion. I want representation, so I'm willing to help.
Awesome. And I can definitely hear and feel the passion. So this show is called T Talks because we're keying it off the T cells, right? So
Yes.
as we close this segment, Jessica, speak to the woman who's watching this, or even the grassroots advocacy founder who is like really in the dark about clinical trial. Speak to that person, and give them just like a takeaway, something that's going to encourage them to want to find out more.
Yes. Okay. So if you are interested in clinical trials, please, please, if your doctor is not asking you about it, ask for yourself what clinical trials are available because you are investing in your health when you ask about clinical trials. You want to have access to the latest
Hmm.
and most recent, care for your type of cancer. And If you are not aware of clinical trials, then please reach out to me and I will help you. I will provide you with any education or questions that you may need answered about this. Clinical trials are so important because without them, we wouldn't have the medications that we have today to treat different types of diseases. And
Mhm.
without representation, there will be disparities in cancer and in other health conditions. So that's why it's so important that everyone is represented. Cancer does not is not equal. You know, sometimes there with cancer, especially in black women too, our cancers can sometimes be more aggressive. So please check out clinical trials. Cancer does not discriminate. I am here to help with whatever you need. Clinical trials pave the way for the future, and they may eventually be assisting in finding a cure for diseases and cancer. So we need you out there to be
Mhm.
represented because not only are you helping yourself, you're helping others as well.
Well said. And I will just say, like, things that you said that we need to be reminded of all the time when it comes to clinical trial. Every drug, for the most part, was a clinical trial. So if you're taking aspirin or if you're taking Tylenol, it was part of a trial at some point.
Yes.
And if we don't participate, right, then we're delaying even a potential cure.
Yes.
And also another thing too, um, when drugs are designed for only a certain race, then if we don't represent, then it may not be as effective for us, for those who aren't participating. So it's a good and strong message, Jessica. We wish you, really a lot of blessings, a lot of favor on your mission. um, we just wish you continued success and continued greatness, because what you're doing is so important. And we just thank you for being that light out there. And we wish you good luck with the documentary and all that you have going on. And we just thank all of you guys in the feed. I know you guys are going back and forth with each other. Thank you for watching. And we will see you guys back here tomorrow for Tea Talks with Total Health. Take care, and we'll talk to you guys again.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.